Welcome, everyone. Welcome to TakeStock Live, investor webinar series, which goes live every Wednesday, 15 minutes after market close.
First up is Robert Boyd, an exploration geologist with 45 years executive experience in mineral exploration, management, corporate finance, and corporate governance. Mr. Boyd is also a director of Condor Resources, Inc., previously served as the lead director for Peregrine Diamonds, as president, CEO, and director of Ashton Mining of Canada, and president, CEO, and director of Athabasca Potash, all acquired. Earlier in his exploration career, he was a senior explorationist and ultimately vice president exploration for Homestake Canada Limited. He is an active volunteer in the Exploration Industry Associations, as a long-serving director of PDAC, and as a current director of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame and former director of AIM-BC. Robert, all yours.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Endurance Gold. We're a North American-focused discovery generator. As a company, we're about 55% owned by 3 insiders, including myself, with about 6%. At the end of the year, we had about 115 million shares issued and outstanding, and and fully diluted about 127 million. At the end of the year, we had about 3.4 million in working capital, and since that time, we've completed and closed $2 million financing at 31-cent unit financing with a half warrant. I'm going to focus on 2 key projects that we own as a project generator. They'll be the British Columbia project that we have called the Reliance Gold Project, where we've got a 2-kilometer trend with excellent drill intersections based on 2020 drilling that we completed, including 10.5 grams per ton over 6 meters. And then also our Alaska Elephant Mountain project, if I have time, where we've got 6-kilometer scale targets in a 12 by 8 kilometer or 12 by 5 kilometer size district. So the 2 projects, Reliance in particular, is well located. It's an epizonal orogenic type target, and we plan to be in drilling in the beginning of the second quarter of 2021. It's next to a former 4 million ounce gold producer in the Braylorn camp. And we had drill intersections, as I've already mentioned, one of them, but also another one at 9.75 over 12 meters. So it's a great looking target over about a 2-kilometer trend where we've got gold in soils and rock over about 1.2 kilometers of that trend. We're fully permitted, drilling completed in 2020, and more to come in the second quarter of this year. We've just finished reporting all the drill results yesterday, and so we don't have any more results coming as I show on there. The Elephant Mountain project's in Alaska, and it's within the Tintina Gold Belt, and it's a 6-kilometer scale targets in this large 12 by 5 kilometer district. And the one intersection we had there is about 0.4 grams per ton over 147 meters with a higher grade core, and that of 4.1. And another higher grade vein type system about 1.5 kilometers away, about 4.1 gram per ton over 4.6 meters. That's fully permitted as well. So this is the Reliance project with the 2.2 kilometer trend. I won't get into the details here, but this just shows you all the channel samples that we've collected over the season over that 1.2 kilometer trend, with a focus at a discovery completed at the south end of that trend on the Eagle Zone, and then the results that we just put out yesterday on the Imperial Zone up on the northwest end of this trend. The pink color is strong iron carbonate alteration, which exists over about a 2-kilometer trend, together with a geochemical anomaly. So I'll just quickly show you the zone at the north end, which is the Imperial Zone, which we just completed the results we published yesterday. This was drilled historically between 1986 and 2008. As you can see, it hangs together with a fairly good grade zone of around 290 meter down plunge, averaging about 10 meter width. And we now have opened that up with shallow drilling. The zone was never drilled near surface, and we followed that up to surface now with a 7.2 gram per ton zone over 4.6 meters. So we plan to be also going back and doing some drilling on the Eagle Zone, and this is about 400 meters to the southeast of that Imperial Zone. And we've identified a zone here that's sticking out on surface, dipping at about a minus 35-degree dip versus that previous zone dipping at about minus 80, suggesting two different structural sets in here, again sitting within a sea of alteration of mostly mafic volcanics. And this shows the next section to the south of that, with very good intersections, including the higher grade hits I mentioned earlier, and one that's just about 10 meters downhole at 6 grams over 12.7 meters. So this zone has a footprint now where we've drilled it with these short RC holes of about 120 by 85 meters, and it looks like it's open for about 400 meters to the southeast based on geochem and other work. The Elephant Project is located up in central Alaska. It's on state mining claims, and we own and control this district on a 100% basis on a 12 by 5 kilometer district. And we have one land position, and between us, it's owned by a native corporation called the Doyon Land Group. But we've got the best targets on state-owned mineral claims, and one of the targets in particular is a 1 kilometer long IP chargeability feature sitting within an intrusive, where we've already got that good grade intersection I mentioned before, 0.4 over 147, which has a 0.63 gram per ton higher grade core over about 48 meters. And about a kilometer away from this is the other higher grade vein set. So this is an intrusive hosted system that will take a real investment in drilling to evaluate. It's got the potential to be a large tonnage, low grade system similar to Kinross's Fort Knox deposit, and has a lot of geological analogies to Victoria Gold's Eagle project in Alaska, in the Yukon. We also have on some of these other targets I mentioned that are kilometer scale soil anomalies, things, grab samples up to 23 grams per ton, but here's a trench in another intrusive about 10 kilometers away from that previous target, where we've got 0.5 grams per ton gold already in a hand trench. So I have a little bit of time, so I'll just mention the Yukon Rare Earth Niobium project that we also control in the southeastern Yukon. So, and this has got very high intrusive hosted type system. This project is early stage and really needs drilling to be completed on it. So that's a quick summary for us. If you want to have any more information, I've provided our contact details for our website, and you can get our phone number and everything on there. Please feel free to ask me any questions if they're not, if I don't answer them in the Q&A session here. Thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you, Robert. Let's bring Robert and David back for the Inquisition, to be led again by Al Turner, a PGO based in Calgary, head of geology for Stantec, chair of the Calgary MEG, and thankfully a frequent Q&A moderator for TakeStock. Al?
Thanks, Mark. Hopefully not an Inquisition, but we'll see, I guess. So first question for Robert, for Endurance Gold. In the March 2021 corporate presentation posted on your website, you indicated that a biogeochemistry study exploration program on the Reliance Gold project identified arsenic anomalies through sampling of Douglas fir tree branches. Is this method assisting you in targeting or to target anomalies more effectively than traditional soil sampling in this area? And if so, are you able to constrain a larger arsenic halo using this method than with soil sampling?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my video's just gone off, so hopefully that'll come back on in a second. But to respond to your question, yes, biogeochem has worked very well for us in identifying targets. And the reason we used biogeochem is we needed to look at a methodology that would do a quick assessment of the property, because we're only about 56 kilometers away from Mount Meager. And Mount Meager blew up 2,400 years ago and dropped a great big layer of pumice, tephra ash on the property. So we can get soil samples, but they're often a lot of digging, and it'll take us sometimes an hour to get a single sample because you have to dig through this popcorn to get it, and an auger doesn't work. So we wanted a first pass tool that we could assess the property on, and Douglas fir, with lots of biogeochemical studies that have happened with respect to Douglas fir, indicates that it really likes to soak up arsenic, and we have a very strong correlation of a 0.85 positive correlation between gold and arsenic on all of our surface sampling, or the soil sampling that we did do. And it's fairly typical in the Braylorn camp that you have a very strong arsenic gold association. So we said, okay, Douglas fir, it's all over the property. It's just like weed on the property. So we used Douglas fir with its amenity to soak up arsenic, and it worked. And it's given us a really good anomaly now that's 2 kilometers long, and it's zoned and contoured right over the known and best gold targets, or where the more intense portions of the anomaly are. So we intend to use that on the balance of the property to identify other targets, potential targets on parallel structures. And so it's a good first pass tool. Now we'll go back into the areas where the higher arsenic numbers are and dig down, make the effort to get the soils and get down and benchmark gold content associated with those arsenic anomalies.
Great, thank you, Robert. Robert, moving on to another question for you. As you've discussed, you have properties in both Canada and the US, and as such are dealing with 2 different permitting regimes. And kind of a hypothetical question here. If you had to make a corporate decision based on limited time and capital, which property would you choose to fast track based on ease of regulatory processes to realize quicker shareholder returns?
Mike, Robert, your mic is on.
I'm sorry. To answer that bluntly, I guess if I was going to be making corporate decisions, we'd be focusing on the projects that have the most potential to turn into mines. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world, there's always going to be political issues you have to address. There's positives and negatives. I mean, we got our drill permit in Alaska, took us about 3 months to get a 5-year permit. Here in BC, it took us almost 11 months. And it was a kind of a silent response. But, you know, it's offset by the fact that we're in central Alaska, but we're fortunately on state mining claims. We don't anticipate in central Alaska needing any federal approvals because we're not on any BLM lands or navigable waterways. And in BC, well, we've got the communities. We're right in the community of Braylorn, 4 kilometers from Goldbridge, and it's an industrial area that's active logging, active mining in the past. So we don't anticipate issues there, but there's always going to be issues. You have to deal with these things and address the questions and other issues that come up with the communities and the permitting status. So I'm evading your question because it really is going to depend on which one is going to drive us. But if I had to make a decision right now, and we have made that decision, our priority is to fund the Reliance project because we've got ore grade intersections right next to a former 4 million ounce gold producer, and we can drive right onto the property. It's a fantastic project and a good location, and so we'll focus our priorities right now based on that, despite the fact it took me longer to get a drill permit here.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Okay, Robert, moving back to you now. Congratulations on your press release that came out yesterday on the Imperial Zone. I guess one question I have here relating to the Imperial Zone was that you mentioned it's been drilled, delineated between 1986 and 2008, and I guess in your presentation you were limited on time to talk about it. But can you frame up for us a little bit of the quantity and type of drill you completed? If geological models exist, if that's helping to drive your exploration, and maybe you could speak to some of those efforts, please.
Well, Yes, geological models are definitely driving our exploration, and that was something that was missing in the activities done by the prior owner between 1986 and 2008. In fact, the gentleman that was the CEO of that company was well known as a dowser, and he located his initial discovery drill hole by dowsing, to give him credit. And that's why he drilled and had a long Hail Mary hole and got a great drill intersection. But they'd never tested it up plunge. And when we had the RC drill in there, these zones are quite iron carbonate altered, so they weather, and the recoveries of mineralization near surface isn't that great. So that's why we tested with RC. But he went back. Every phase of drilling he did between 1986 and 2008 was to go back and continue to drill the same zone. The Eagle Zone that we discovered on surface were catrol roads that he put up the hill, but didn't sample the outcrops. The outcrops we sampled, and we were getting 31-meter channel samples running 4 or 5 grams in channel samples. And they were sitting there unsampled by this gentleman because they didn't have veins, a lot of veining in them, so they didn't look like they were mineralized, so he didn't bother sampling, right? And it's so the issue with the historic work is that it wasn't systematically done to a professional quality, and he didn't really like geologists, and so geological models were not a big part of what he did. And so I think he lost an opportunity here. He had a zone like the Eagle Zone where we got 9 drill hole hit on that, and they averaged 16 meters of width, averaging about 5 grams per ton. And all 9 holes, never been drilled, didn't have that mineralization, and yet it was sticking out on surface because every one of those holes pretty much collared in mineralization. So we continued. So our effort now is to focus on good systematic exploration with good geological models, understand the structural setting, and identify where the rhyodal structures are, the hanging wall structures, and the footwall structures, and use that to predict and define mineralization.
Great, thanks, Robert. And Robert, now you touched a little bit on this in the last answer you gave me, but you mentioned as well that there's been a lot of recent and historic programs, some of the drill programs that have been completed on Reliance and Elephant Mountain properties. Does Endurance have access to this data? I guess I imagine for the Reliance, it's not as complicated. Maybe it is in Canada, but I know that it's a little trickier sometimes in the States to get data. Have you had success in acquiring the historic data, and how can you kind of compile it to fast track your properties?
Well, Al, that's a good question because it wasn't easy. Essentially, what happened with the Reliance is that the prior owner, the CEO, reorganized the company, sold control. The company was restructured, and in fact, the asset was stripped out. It was Crown grants. It was stripped out for about $1. And whoever acquired the Crown grants, we've never quite been able to figure that out who it was. They let them lapse. They forgot to pay the taxes, and they came open. And so we acquired the property from the map stakers. 2 map stakers that acquired it. So it came very much unencumbered, but it also came without any data. So we had to spend a bit of time going back to the former owner's widow because the gentleman passed away, and the prior stakers did find some data in her basement. And then I structured the deal. So when I optioned it in September of 2019, I gave myself 3 or 4 months to actually hunt down and find additional data, which I successfully did. So we have some data, but we're missing some. But there was a very poor quality of the work that was done in any case. The best we can find, and even in consultants' reports that we tracked down, were handwritten quick logs, and that's all that existed on some of the drill holes that he did. And very piecemeal sampling. So it's been a challenge, but we're trying our best now to relocate and identify where the holes were because they were never surveyed downhole or at collar. And so there is a challenge to a lot of this, but it's a challenge we've been trying to address with respect to Reliance. On the elephant property, we had some historic data. It was done also pre 43101 days, but it was done by Placer Dome. So we have been able to track down the geochemical data and the drill holes there. But we did our own drilling on that project to proof up and confirm and redefine the key zone at the Elephant Mountain, what we call the Elephant Mountain North target. So we've done our own drilling there, and so we're comfortable stepping out from that. Now that project just needs systematic drilling, 200 to 300 meter holes in a grid to define this 1.5 by 600 meter IP chargeability feature and find the higher grade feeder features to it. So that's all new data we'll have to generate.
Okay, thanks, Robert.